What's up, nation? Hey, today on the show, Christian Espinosa, hacker, entrepreneur, Ironman. He's summited a few mountains. Today's the day. If you want to be lazy, just sit around. There's no action happening here. Today, live in the lab with Keith Bilous.
Hi, I'm Keith Bilous, and this is Live in the Lab. All right. A little bit of weirdness in front of the camera there for anybody who's watching. So I'm like, hey, where's the button? Where's the button? I can't get it going. How did you go viral on TikTok? You were on America's Got Talent. How much do you get paid to be on AGT? Oh, you didn't get paid. Keith and Steve here in Live in the Lab.
You're a great interviewer. I love it.
48 miles, 48 hours. And not just once. You ain't seen nothing yet. I hit 50 last time, and I'm like, yeah, things are a little different than they were 10 years ago. So trust me, things are to keep. You have no time for the BS that much of society seems to put on the table. Why is that? Like, what you're talking about is real right now. There's just no bullshit here, but it's just real. We brought you in with some Marley. I said, Joseph, let's talk music for a second. You said, well, Keith, oldies, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've never talked to a sir before. Why are you a sir? In many ways, we're the same story. I came from nothing. You came from nothing. I think the old saying goes that if you want a trophy, you climb Everest. If you want respect, you climb K2. I've built an airline myself, and it's pretty fascinating when you can have a conversation with yourself with your own knowledge. Have you done that before? Why are we rushing to make these tools if all they're going to do is hurt humanity? Does the world need an Oppenheimer moment with AI?
What a fun show.
What's going on, nation? The opener didn't work. It just didn't work for me. I'm a little disappointed. I gotta be honest, I had a big opener prepared. You know those times when you're all set up, then you have an awesome meeting? Like I had an awesome meeting that was scheduled for 30 minutes. I waited for 75. I was like, holy fuck, man, it just kind of set the rest of my morning off. And Christian Espinosa coming up here today in the lab. Sorry, guys. Christian, I expected to have a bigger opener for you. I had a bunch of great music, had a bunch of great video, and then I just, Anyways, I'm glad you're here. Christian's done a few things in his life. Just a couple things. He's climbed a couple mountains, done a couple ultra marathons, sat around a few times, maybe sat around even more. The guy just sits around. Like, I would encourage you not even just to read his book. I'm going to introduce Christian with his book a little later, but I would encourage you not to read his book because it might bore you. It won't inspire you. It won't move you forward. It will not enlighten you at all, actually. So don't buy Christian's book. I'm telling you right now, just like when you see on those albums, don't listen to the music because it might offend you. What do? You listen to it. So I'm telling you right now, coming up on the show today, Christian Espinosa, the guy's accomplished a few things, and I think we're going to talk about them. I've accomplished a couple things too. Yeah, I've climbed a few mountains, sold my company for $50 million, hung out in the cage with some white sharks. Oh, hey, like these things right here. Live production here in the lab, just hanging out in a cage in Australia with these white sharks. Somebody told me, they said, anybody can do that. You just got to foot the bill. I guess so. I guess anybody could do it, but I don't know about you, Christian. I haven't known a lot of people that will spend time in the cage with some sharks. White sharks, 15-footers, 20-footers. Yeah, it's been 4 days. 4 days, 3 nights. Sure, I didn't sleep in the cage, though. I slept on the boat. But I did spend a lot of time in the cage, and I loved it. All right, so my monologue is going to be short today, or not. Here's going to be the monologue. So if you're intrigued by what I'm going to say, I encourage you to perk your ears up. So now shit's getting real, nation. We are into April. Shit's getting real. Live in the lab, hundreds of shows behind us, guests galore, incredible guests galore, thousands of minutes of conversations, thousands of people we've touched along the way, thousands of people we've interacted with and engaged with along the way. Launched a second show here recently, Mornings in the Lab. We go 5 days a week, Monday to Friday with Nicole Bernard, touching lots of people, interacting with, engaging with people everywhere. Like I'm just talking, we're engaging. My followers on LinkedIn are going up right now at an average of 10.3 per day. Just going right up. People are like, hey, what's Bilous doing? What's Uncle Keith doing there in the lab? It looks like he's doing some pretty cool stuff. I know Christian's been watching. I see him liking our stuff. I see him interact. He's like, hey, what's this guy doing over there? What's this guy doing in the green room? Christian, you're sitting in the green room. So here's my offer for you, nation. If you're a business owner, you want to get in front of an inspiring, active audience of people that are looking to achieve their next goal in life. If you're looking to partner with an entrepreneur, just trying to find him, hold on. Oh, wait, it's me. Fuck, it's me, actually. Yeah, if you're looking to partner with an entrepreneur who's not going backwards, and I'm also get to the point, I'm not getting any cheaper. No, to partner with me in the show is not getting any cheaper. So we are on a path now as we enter April, and we're into, all right, let's start thinking about how we can monetize this thing. Let's think about how we can provide extra value to the people we're partnering with and working with. So I invite you into the lab to do some work with me. I invite you to be part of our shows. I invite you to be part of our content. I invite you to sit alongside me and engage with my audience. I invite you to meet with me. Let's talk. Let's do some business together. Let me share with you my vision of the Business Athlete Performance Lab. Because I've done this once before and I'm doing it again. I'm just executing the playbook that I did before, but just in a different industry. You see, I see how the media industry has collapsed around us. You've seen it. I've seen it. And I know people are doing something about it. And so am I. I'm building a business around it right in front of all of you. So again, if you like what I'm doing, you know I show up. There's no doubt that I'm going to not show up. I'm showing up. I iterate. I improve. Every single day we improve. If you're looking to invest in somebody, in something that's growing, that's changing around us, that's creating a difference, that's doing something in LinkedIn and YouTube that nobody else is doing, come knock on my door. You're invited. Let's do business together. It's not getting any cheaper. I'm telling you, it's not getting any cheaper. And that's not to be with attitude or braggadocious. Not at all. It's confident. Like when I wake up every single day, I can see the future. I always tell you guys, we're in the clubs. Well, we're probably just moving out of the clubs right now, maybe into the concert halls. Maybe just a smidgen. We're just kind of looking outside the door. But I'm telling you, if you want to invest when we're in the stadiums, well, it might be too late. You might be just left outside. So if you want to invest when we're in the stadiums, that's cool. I would invite you in when we're in the stadiums. But if you want to invest in our journey while we're in the clubs and form a relationship that's going to grow over the next number of years, let's do some business together. All right. So listen, I'm going to invite Christian Espinosa into the lab. I'm excited to talk to him about mountain climbing, cybersecurity, all the things that are nerdy to me. So I know I got to get out. Christian, I got to get out of here shortly after 1 because my kid's picking me up. He just bought a car and apparently we got to go register it. So we might have to have you back for hour 2 because I really want to talk about all the things in your world. All right. So let's bring Christian Espinosa into the world. I am going to do this though. Bear with me for 1 quick second. We are going to bring Christian in. And he knows I'm full joking with him about everything here. Let me just pause. And I need, so this is the power of live radio, right? So, or live streaming to everybody. Okay. So we're going to do this right here to pause this here. And I want to do this man a justice. So yeah. So Christian, esteemed thought leader, best known for the smartest person in the room book. If you're looking for the smartest person in the room, we need to invite Mr. Christian Espinosa to the stage.
Hello, Keith.
How's it going, man?
Going well, going good.
Where are you joining us from today?
I am in Phoenix, Tempe, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix. Suburb.
Oh, yeah. So my Arizona friends again. I knew that actually. Yeah. So I'm in Winnipeg. We have like cousins, right? We're connected, right? You know why we're connected, Christian, right?
The seasons?
No, actually. So you guys took my hockey team back in 1997. So
I see.
The Winnipeg Jets flew the coop. They ended up in Arizona, and now they're not flourishing. So I like to tease my friends from Arizona at their lack of hockey support. But listen, I don't fault you for not supporting your local hockey team because I know you were too busy either writing books, building companies, running ultra marathons, climbing mountains. So I told everybody before the show, like this was going to be a show where it's going to be lazy and laid back and no encouragement or excitement, Christian. You've done nothing, have you?
Well, it's all relative,
So listen, I didn't realize we had the matching shirt show today either. I was like, hey, great. So for me, I have to wear the same clothes all the time. So if I do like content, I can intersperse it. It's one of the secrets of live shows. So I've been wearing the same outfit for 3 weeks now.
That's a good point. I've had to do the same thing.
He's like, oh, what outfit did I record that? Oh, that outfit. Right. I got to put that one on. Right. I changed the underwear though.
Gotta have your hairstyle the same too, the whole time.
This is true. Yeah. And the shaving part, it's kind of got to be a little consistent. Hey, so yeah, that's awesome. So listen, thanks for joining me here in the lab today. I was very serious with what I said earlier. Was really excited to sit down and talk to you today. I know a little bit of your story, just what you put out there, the mountains, the ultra marathons, the cybersecurity stuff. And I'm totally serious. Those are all the things in my book. Check. I'm like, all right, I only got an hour with this guy. Where do I start? So where do I start with Christian Espinosa?
You can start wherever you like. We can start at extreme sports or cybersecurity. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, so let's start in extreme sports. Let's start even back. Let's go even earlier. Let's go back. Let's go back to little Christian. So big Christian does awesome things. what prompted Big Christian to become Big Christian? Was it his parents? Was it the world you lived in? Were mom and dad busy climbing mountains and running marathons and running big businesses? Or were you like the anomaly in the family? You're like, no, mom and dad, I'm going to go climb some mountains and run some ultra marathons. Just maybe 24 of them. Have you run 24 ultra marathons?
24 Ironman triathlon.
I'm sorry. Yeah. You ran 24.
Probably like a dozen ultra marathons. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I've only run 24 ultra triathlons, Keith. Can I correct you? And I've run 12 ultra marathons. All right, I'm out of here. I got some work to do, nation. So no, but seriously, Christian, seriously. Where's your drive come from, man? Like, oops, that one's not working here today. Jeez. Where's your drive come from? Where is it? In my experience, people coming through the lab either get that drive from how they were raised, from their environment, the surround. Today I had a post on, make sure who's in your circle, who's helping you succeed. Like, why have you achieved the things you've achieved, Christian?
I grew up in a very chaotic, poor environment with a drug addicted mother, and it was just like the police, car wrecks, low life people at the house all the time. It was very, very chaotic. And I knew innately that I didn't want to live that lifestyle. So I worked super hard to get out of my environment. And I think my environment was my drive. And I used to have a lot of resentment about how my mother raised me and my brothers. They didn't escape. They're still part of that environment. Yet the fact of the matter is, if my mother didn't raise me the way she did, or chose not to really raise me, I probably wouldn't have had the drive that got me to where I am today. So that same drive got me to a point in my life where I had to sort of unravel it and realize, it's no longer me against the world, which used to be my attitude, and accept that it's me in the world. And I realized that drive got me to a certain point, but there's a glass ceiling holding me back. And that required me to do a lot of reflection and transformation.
Jumping right into it, which I fully appreciate. Christian, does all by yourself, partner, mentors, psychologists, therapists, like where do you find the strength to look in your own mirror and say, I got to get out of this environment?
Part of it, I think I knew innately, this is not the right environment. I mean, as much as my mother used drugs and alcohol and all that to, quote, have fun or escape reality, the fact of the matter is her friends and her were never really having fun. They were miserable. And I didn't want to grow up like that. And then the other thing that was a driver is I'm very competitive and I don't like people placing boundaries on me. And I grew up in a small town in Clarksville, Arkansas, where, obviously if my mom wrecks the car or she's in jail, the whole town knows.
Yeah.
And I felt like the whole town had their eyes on me. Maybe not, but this is just my perception.
Yes.
Thinking, oh, he's not going to make it. So I had this pressure, it's self-imposed pressure to prove myself and prove the people in my town wrong, that, what, despite my circumstances, I will make it and I'll show everyone. I
can relate to that. And this is not about me, but I just want to share that with you because I can relate to that statement, and we'll get to that along the way of our conversation. But I can relate to the feeling of somebody, or you think people are doubting you, right? You think they're all talking about you, even though they're not. It's just all in our own head, right? But you think, oh yeah, they're all talking. No, they're not actually. They don't really fucking give a care about Christian or Keith, but we think they do, right? But that's what fuels you, isn't it? Because you're like, well, I got to prove that person wrong. I had a guy say to me, I went to an interview as a young lad, and I I'm a little bit rough around the edges, and he's like, you're not going to make it. Okay. So then when I did, I drove by his office and just kind of threw the finger up in the air as I drove by, just in a fun way. And I was like, okay, right? Probably like yourself, right?
Yeah, I think we often think our motivation has to be something like super positive, but if whatever the motivation is, if it gets you to the point you need to get to, then use that. Use it as leverage, as a fuel, like you mentioned.
So, but what also continues to strike me. So I've gone through my own personal journey. I've been through divorce, and I've been through that journey in life. I used mountain climbing. I used trekking as a metaphor to move forward. And I'm bringing that up right at the beginning of our conversation, I guess, Christian, because you running those marathons, those ultra marathons, those Ironmans, climbing those mountains, that's you constantly moving away from yesterday's environment. So if I can maybe speak your language, you're thinking that every time you got to the top of the mountain and got to the bottom of the mountain, physically, you can't see the other side. You're further away from yesterday. Am I right?
Yeah, yesterday's in the past. You gotta look forward. You gotta spend less time looking in the rearview mirror and more time looking through the windshield forward. 100%.
Yeah, but I've always found that mountain climbing or any kind of competitive, individual type sport very much reflects that, doesn't it? Because when you start that ultra marathon, you never finish it and say, I wish I didn't do it.
Well, sometimes it hurts pretty badly. You're thinking, what the hell? Why did I sign up for this thing? But yeah, you're always like looking for the next one to do. For me, like an Ironman, it typically takes me like 13 hours.
Mhm.
And I kind of look at it as like a lifetime condensed into a day, or the 13 hours.
Yes.
You go through all the emotions of like, I remember one Ironman triathlon, I was like, uh, on the side of the road in the fetal position, like vomiting. And I'm thinking, man, am I going to be able to get up and move forward? And it's just about getting, you're going to have those ups and downs just like you have in life, but it's a matter of like how you
Yes.
handle the valleys that come along the way. Like me laying on the side of the road in the fetal, am I going to lay
Yes.
there and give up and let my mind like say, I can never do this? Or I'm going to say, this is part of that journey. I'm going to grow from this and become better and stronger and more resilient. So I got up, started walking, then eventually started running, and eventually I'm feeling good again, and it's like that's how life is. And I think
Yes.
putting yourself out there in a journey like an Ironman, I'm not saying everyone has to do an Ironman, but we have to realize as long as we're moving forward, that's what matters, in my opinion.
It's spectacular metaphor. It's what I'm even doing with this show. Every single day I'm showing up. It's better today than it was yesterday. It wasn't perfect today, but I know I'll be even a little better tomorrow. But I was talking about the meeting I had before my show. It kind of set my morning off aside. I said to the fellow on the call, I'm like, I'm whatever, hundreds of videos, thousands of minutes ahead of the person who's thinking about getting started, right? So just like yourself, I've done all these activities in my life. You know that falling down is going to happen. You know that challenges are going to happen, like John Anderson talked about in the lab here 2 days ago. You've learned along the way to have the mental resilience to overcome knowing what's already going to happen. Because inevitably you're going to fall on the side of the road. You're like, okay, I know I'm going to fall. I got to find the mental fortitude to get up.
Well, that's part of the journey, and definitely with entrepreneurship. I
Yes.
have failed lots. I've paid a lot of the dumb tax. The whole thing is, though, a lot of it is who stays in the game the longest, who can persevere. Like you said, with the hours of time you put into the videos and all those are all incremental learning that you've done that somebody else hasn't done. That's still writing the plan to do it and waiting for the planets to align to take the first step.
Yes.
So that's the opposite of my philosophy. My philosophy is
Mine too.
get in the game and figure it out, basically.
Yes. Yeah. So 24 ultra marathons, right? No,
24
triathlon.
Ironman.
Ironman. Sorry, I'm not even giving him the credit he deserved.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
And then how many ultra marathons?
Probably like a dozen. Yeah, I don't really know the number.
That's awesome. And then you've climbed 2 out of the 7 summits.
2 of the 7.
So I said to my colleague this morning on the morning show, because I didn't purposely, I don't like to purposely dig too far in my guests, because I find then the conversation from my point of view becomes just too boxed. I really like to have an organic conversation. So I didn't want to know what mountains you climbed. I guessed in my head, I'm thinking Kilimanjaro and Aconcagua, or Kilimanjaro and Vincent.
You got the first one right. Kilimanjaro is typically what people start with. It's more of a hike than a climb.
Yeah, I've
The
done it
second
too.
one I did was Mount Elbrus in Russia. It's the highest.
Oh, you did that one. Okay. Yeah. How was that one?
That one was awesome. I it was my first time to Russia. I'm a big fan of Rocky 4 with Ivan Drago. People used to call me Ivan Drago.
I was
flat top back in the
just going to
day.
say that to you. I can see why you're a big fan of Ivan Drago, because you might look like Dolph Lundgren a little bit.
Yeah, maybe back in the day. I'm not quite as fit today, but yeah. But that was a great experience. That mountain, I had a life altering moment. I almost died, so it gave me some appreciation for the micro moments, which I wrote about in my second. And that mountain I was climbing, it's not a super technical climb. It's like a 45-degree angle where you have to kick in, with your feet and the crampons and make a platform. And for some reason, I started daydreaming a little bit, and I didn't kick in one of them enough. So the platform, let go with my foot. My foot went through it, and I started sliding down the mountain on my back. And, it's snow, so you start going pretty fast. And, I was able to flip over and do a self-arrest and, put my ice axe in and dig my crampons in. But it just taught me like, hey, you need to pay more attention and be more present in these specific small moments. And the irony is, like, we took a little break before that, and at base camp, someone said you should take a bottle of Coke. And I've never taken a bottle of Coke on the mountain. I tried to open it at the little stop. It slipped out of my hand and just started like accelerating down the mountain, like super fast. And that would have been me if I didn't like know what to do and flip over and stop.
I'm just pausing and taking this in. So you were falling. You had to flip your body around. You had to lock in with your crampons and your axes so you didn't go all the way down the mountain. I've often wondered what that experience might be like, because I've watched videos and I watch climbing stuff. All that stuff interests me. You've went through it.
I did. I had to do the self-arrest. Yeah.
Jesus, man. So I'm a fan of the moment behind the moment, then digging even further behind the moment. So can we go back even further? So what are you doing when that happens? Like, so are you like, what, take me into that second. What's happening when that happens?
Well, I just, my foot slipped and I
Yeah.
started like the people that were in front of me, like just started falling away in the distance. And then the next thing I knew I was on my back.
Jesus.
And you have a backpack on. So I'm
Yes.
starting to accelerate pretty quickly. And it's all happens super fast, right?
Of course.
And I've done a lot of skydiving and stuff. So I'm used to reacting pretty quickly. It just feels like a long time in your mind. So I knew what to do. And I thought for a second, if I don't do something, I'm going to accelerate, hit a rock and die, So I thought, I'm not really in a position where I want to die right now. So I just flipped over like I've done the training, dug the ice axe in. It's in my hand. I didn't let go of it. I have, it has a strap, so I wouldn't let go anyway. Dug it in and pushed my chest against the ground. The ice axe in. The axe is supposed to slow you down. And then dug the crampons in. And then, then I realized, man, this is kind of embarrassing because I look up and I'm pretty far away from my group. And I'm like, I'm already freaking exhausted. Now they're all going to wait for me cold. I got to climb all the way back up to the group. I was like, man, this just caused me a lot more effort on this trip. This momentary lapse of being present.
Humans amaze me. So you just tell me you almost die and you're worried about being embarrassed because you're slowing the group down. And now let's just hang on that for a second, because I want to share something with you that I learned yesterday. I had a fellow named Jeremy Ryan in the lab. He's a pro surfer, retired pro surfer, Christian. And I was asking him about when he goes into the water, what he thinks about. I'm like, in my head, Christian, I'm thinking, well, he's thinking about sharks or thinking about drowning or thinking about the bad things, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, I'm thinking about being empathetic. I'm like, what? He's like, oh yeah. He goes, I want to make sure the people around me get the good waves. I'm like, who are you? So I go from him telling me that he goes into the water thinking of empathy to a guy that is almost dying going down the mountain. And I'm here to entertain and inform. Here's the entertaining, inform part. And you're worried about being embarrassed? Like, honest to God, that tells me a lot about you as a human being. Wow.
It's not so much being embarrassed. It's also like making everyone have to wait for me.
Yes.
I'm part of a team,
Yeah. But even just interacting with you right now about this, you kind of crack some humor around it and you're like, yeah, but you almost died. But I guess in the same breath though, I'm going to anticipate that if you're doing this, you're training for it, you're knowing that it can happen. So going back to the start of the conversation, you anticipate when shit goes sideways, you're trained to react, right?
Of course. It's all about reducing risk. So like with skydiving, people think skydiving is a risky activity. It certainly is, but you can do a lot of things to reduce your risk. Just like with mountaineering. You can't predict everything, but you can reduce your risk. With skydiving, you can obviously be trained to know what to do if you have twisted lines, know what to do if your main parachute doesn't open. You can wear a helmet. People think, why do you wear a helmet? It's not going to help you hit the ground, but it's because there's other skydivers in the air that might hit you as well. You can have two altimeters. You have a digital one in your ear, one in your hand. You can make sure you have reserve parachute and know how to use it, know when it's packed, and jump at the right altitude, deploy at the right altitude, know how to land, jump with the right people. I mean, so there's a lot of things you can do to reduce the risk. And people just think the stuff I do is extremely crazy. It might be crazy, but I'm also very aware of the risk and I make sure I'm trained. And as an example, I've got some friends that went to Denali and climbed Denali. I had to cancel a trip there.
Okay.
And there was a guide on the trip who had summit fever because sometimes you have to wait a long time before the weather cleared. And I always want to be in a position where I don't have to rely on someone to make a decision, like a guide or something like that. And that person decided to go ahead and climb the mountain and ended up losing, part of his nose, part of his ear, and two of his fingers because it was the wrong decision. And I don't want to be in a position where I'm going to be like, oh, I guess I'll just follow the group. I want to be in a position where I'm trained and informed enough to make the right decision myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to make the decision, don't you?
Well, I want to know enough to not put my life in somebody else's hands 100%. Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to take responsibility for our own life, and nobody cares about our own life as much as we do. We like to think they might, but that's typically not common.
It also struck me when you were introducing yourself at the beginning of the show here, Christian, that you did not want to be, I think you used something along the lines of, I didn't want to be stuck in a world with a ceiling. I didn't want to have a cap on what I could achieve, right? And what you're also telling me is that you want to have the control over how far you can succeed past what somebody might limit you for or limit you with. You're like, no, I can go higher. No, I'm going to make the decision to go to the top of Denali. I'm informed enough to make the decision kind of thing, right? That's an important attribute of yours, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that's why I'm also an entrepreneur. I realize there's a lot of risk with that too. I could lose
Mhm.
everything, and I almost have before. But I've had to do some reflection and realize, I'm more comfortable almost losing everything and having the upside of gaining a lot more. And it's not just the monetary amount or anything. It's the experience, the journey, the
Mhm.
tools, the resources that really matter. I'm more comfortable with that than working for somebody else and clocking in and clocking out. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just for my personality, I
Yes.
prefer to have the entrepreneur, build something and take the risk. I like to take.
Yeah, I absolutely can relate to that as well. I had a similar conversation earlier today. Christian, the book, The In Between. I want to open this up here for Nation to hear this, that some regrets don't hit you all at once. They seep in at the corners of your life all night or on a long drive until they become a refrain. Those are the worst nights, or those are the worst regrets of all. I was living in a bubble that burst on May 9th, 2022. It was the middle of the afternoon. As my partner Vanessa and I approached a major intersection, a blue car accelerated, ran the red light, and T-boned a black truck directly in front of us. Boom, Christian says. The blue car's hood crumpled like an accordion to absorb the impact. Within seconds, its front end was completely smashed, and its windows were broken. Then everything went out of focus except for what I needed to do. Assess the scene for safety. There's Christian going into action. Check on the drivers of the blue car and black truck and call 911. Nothing else mattered. I felt a heightened sense of purpose, Christian says. I had always focused on one macro moment after another, the next mountain to climb or business to start. I hadn't spent much time approaching the micro moments, life in between the macros. I've been living in a macro moment bubble, and this accident awakened a desire to paint a complete picture of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to approach my life. This is my story of learning how to value the in-between and prioritize consciously living in the micro. Now, Christian, when I read that, when I booked you on the show, as a fan of a guy who likes to learn what happens behind the moment, but then even behind the moment, I read that and I was like, I really got to sit down with Christian Espinosa, because when I read this and I learn about your purpose in life, that tells me a lot about you, Christian. Talk about this book and talk about the idea of the in-between.
The book is really a focused memoir about where I've got things right and where I've got them wrong. Most of probably more of where I got them wrong. I like to do a lot of reflection. So for me, I would say, I don't know, label myself as a high achiever. I go after big goals, and that's the macro goal. And what I've realized over my life is my hyper focus on achieving this macro goal, which is between where I am now and that goal, are these little micro moments. And I've realized I've neglected some of these moments, or didn't show up with intention in these moments. And this could be a relationship, which I talk about in the book, a relationship that crumbled because I was too focused on a macro goal. It could be a time with like my grandfather, which when he was dying, I was too focused about all this other stuff, and it wasn't in the moment enough to like send him off right, because the last time I saw him, I didn't say anything. I was too like worried about all this other stuff. And it's really just about showing up with some intention in the moments that are right in front of us, because ultimately our life is a collection of these small moments. And also that macro thing you might want to go after, if you're not paying attention to things in front of you, you might just continue on that path, but realize that that's not the right path for you. Because I think we can be informed along the way that maybe this goal I think I want is not the right goal anymore. So it's really about balancing those two and having some more presence with intention of the things right in front of us. Because I believe ultimately life boils down to how we feel on a minute by minute basis. So we might as well do what we can to feel good as we can in the moment. And sometimes even a simple smile to someone, which doesn't cost you anything, it can make somebody's day. And I talk about that in actually both of my books. So yeah,
the power of kindness, right? Just the power of showing a smile to somebody, and because we never know what that person across from us is going through at that time, right, Christian? And
right.
by you giving them a smile or acknowledging them in a positive way could even change somebody's life when you think about it. One of the things I like to do here in the lab is be selfish and learn from my guests and take it all in. I have a macro goal right now, which is to build this into the largest talk show on YouTube and LinkedIn. I'm struggling some days with my micro moments, Christian. I'm going to be vulnerable in front of the audience right now, because as I'm listening to you talk, I know I'm sucking at some of the micro moments in my life because I'm so focused on this macro goal, on this big magnanimous goal that I'm so focused on achieving. Help me. a little bit with keeping me aware with what I shouldn't be missing out on?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I struggle with it too. I'm trying to build my second cybersecurity business and there's a lot of work. I have some ambitious goals for it. I have to be hyper aware though that I'm also in a relationship. I also need to be healthy. I also have other things that if I end up with this macro goal, achieving it, but all the things in my present fall away, like what was the point? I think life, we have to balance the two. I'm not saying don't have big goals, but if we achieve that big goal and all the people we care about along the way are like alienated, then what was the point? And the thing is, we're not going to be fulfilled after we achieve the big goal if we're not fulfilled now. So I think we have to tune into the things that are important to us. And that's where really, I think as humans, we're good at knowing what we don't want in life.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not good at knowing what we do want. And I think going through the exercise and realizing what do I do want and what is the value of that to me and what am I going to do to maintain that? And how do I show up with intention to maintain that? I think going through the exercise makes things a lot clearer. It provides a lot more clarity.
This is helpful for me because I built a company before, started up and sold it. You have as well. I'm learning. I'm trying to take my learnings from that experience so that I don't make some of those same mistakes this time, right? So but I'm going to be honest with you. I do find myself in some moments from time to time so focused on the macro that I have to create awareness to go, oh no, actually no, let's go for dinner tonight with my wife, or let's go and do this with my kids. And I know you do too, because you're a high achiever. You're like, I got to go do this. I got to do this because you know you can.
Yeah.
Right. Because I know you can. I can relate to you, Christian. You go into a room of 1,000 people and you look around, you go, okay, there's 999 people that aren't like me here. And that's okay. But then you struggle with that too. I know you do because I do too. You're like, okay, well, how, right? You ask yourself those questions sometimes. How do I focus on building my second business? Because you have these big goals while I'm not breaking everything underneath it. I struggle.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Like, so do you schedule moments throughout your week to make sure that your partners and your relationships don't fall apart? Like, let's give some nuggets to Nation that, if I can ask you to be a little vulnerable, what are things that you're doing to make sure you don't fall down the mountain, Christian, so that you do turn over and get the axe picks in? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah. That's how I use that metaphor for life sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So what are you doing right now? I'm sharing with you. What are you doing? Because I struggle with what you're talking about right now, frankly. And I bet you, Christian, there's a lot of people listening to us right now, or will listen to us later, that struggle with this.
Sure. It's easy for me to fall into that, hyper focus on the business, work on it 15 hours a day and skip working out and ignore, my girlfriend, think, oh, she'll understand what, blah, blah, blah. But I think writing a book needs to be transformational to the author as well as anybody that reads it. So when I wrote both of my books, and I'm working on my third now, it was a lot of reflection, a lot of a personal journey. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult to like look at my life and inspect it from different lenses, and then realize, I want to improve and I want to get better. That's ultimately, I think, the point of life is progress.
Yes.
So I am very hyper aware, and it's sometimes I slip a little bit, right? But I'm very hyper aware. Like this last relationship I was in fell apart because I was too focused on the macro. I didn't appreciate somebody that was right in front of me. I didn't show them that I appreciated them and understood them. I didn't make them feel seen, heard, or understood. So with this relationship I'm in now, I don't want to repeat the same thing. So when I find myself going down this work mode, and I got to do this, I got to do that, I just zoom out. I step back. I like to call it condor vision. When I look at my life, I zoom out like this condor flying over me. And I'm thinking, what is Christian doing? Is he like walking through the woods to a cliff, or is he like heading the right direction? And it's on multiple fronts. It's just not a business. It's with health, wealth, and relationships, typically the big three.
Yes.
I look at those big three. And then what I do if I feel like I'm out of balance is I will schedule the time on my calendar. I'm a big fan of like monotasking and time blocks. I'll put it on my calendar. So nobody can schedule a meeting with me. So, let's say between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., I'm just going to spend time with my girlfriend. That's it. I put that on my calendar, and I try to honor the things I put on my calendar. If I put on there, I'm going to work out between 3 and 4, I try to honor that time. I'm not saying I'm perfect and do it every time, but that's what I try to live by. Because I also think, well, a client scheduled or a prospect scheduled a sales meeting, I always honor that, right? So why can't I honor these other things on the calendar? They're just as important. And that's what I try to do. That's what I do, but I'm not always successful at it.
I'm with you, but to your point, that's life, right? And I think as long as we're always trying, and so you write books. it sounds to me, to hold yourself accountable, because you use the words of, when I'm writing my books, I'm learning too, and I'm trying to reflect upon it. I think you used some of that paraphrasing.
Mhm.
So I use this show to hold myself accountable. It allows me to express myself like I am with you, like I'm talking about things with you that I haven't talked to the nation before, because I'm putting in those 15, 16, 17 hours a day. I love it because I love what I'm building. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to deny the fact that I love what I'm doing right now, but cancels everything behind it. But I'm aware of my relationships around me, and I don't want them to fail because of what you said too, which is, what's the point of achieving the macro if you get there and there's nobody with you?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So as I said at the beginning here, like, so my son, he's like, hey dad, I know your show's over at 1. Can we go and get this done? And I was like, I'm not going to lie to you. I was like, well, but I got this to do, that to do. No, I'm actually good. So here I'm being vulnerable with you guys. Like, no, I'm going to pause, because the work that I said I have to do, it'll be there when I get back. I'm going to go spend the hour with Carter. We're going to go get his shit done, and he's going to be happy, which is going to make me happy. Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard, isn't it, Christian?
Well, it's much better to do what you're suggesting than wait to there's an implosion at some level, right?
Yes.
And it's the same thing with my relationships. I don't want to wait till there's a boiling point, because then it's almost too late. So you want to keep a pulse on things and schedule the time, because from my life, I've achieved a lot, and I've achieved some of it alone.
Mhm.
And I realized when I reflect on my life, like, the times that I was the most fulfilled wasn't when I achieved something by myself. It's when there's other people with me.
Okay, so I can relate to this. Talk about that though, because when you achieved some of those, when you've made some of those accomplishments, you did them alone, but you say when you had people around you, meaning like as part of a team climbing the mountain, or do you mean like relationships at home that you could go back to, or that they can share with you in those accomplishments? Because your accomplishments are largely individual accomplishments, but yet you say to me, the ones that I achieved are ones that are when I had people around me. Do you mean that like a crowd of people around you, or relationships at home that you knew emotionally were supporting you, Christian?
I mean, more relationships at
Mhm.
home that were supporting me.
Mhm.
I mean, there's typically people around when you do a race,
Of course.
obviously. But I've done races where I just said, screw it. Nobody wants to go with me. I want to do it. My partner at the time doesn't want to go with me, so I'm just going to go by myself. I'm like, screw it. I don't want to, I want to check the box. Do
Yeah.
all the races in North
Yes.
America. So I,
Yes.
went to Cabo, Los Cabos, Ironman Los Cabos, went there by myself, did the race by myself, didn't know anybody. And I thought back to like the races I went with, like friends of mine or my girlfriend or a family member. And all those races were much more memorable, the whole experience.
Yeah. The whole experience, eh?
So it was like, was checking that box really that important? And back then for me it was, but now I look at things a little bit different.
A sign of maturity. I'm 52. I'm thinking you're a few years younger than I am. In your 40s?
53.
Oh, so good. Somebody older than Uncle Keith. Yes. Win for the uncle here. I'm going to
Pretty
suggest. Yes, I'm going to suggest to you that. Not suggest. Wrong choice of word. I'm going to wonder aloud whether your thought process now is because of maturity. Where you're like, okay, yeah, when I'm in my late 30s or 40s, I'm doing this by myself. I'm the ultimate achiever. I'm Christian. But now you reflect back and you're like, well, you know what? Man, it would have been nice had I done this with X or done this with Y. Do you think it's part of that process, Christian? Where you don't know what you don't know?
I think for me, I always look at what got me here. And what got me here, like let's say, it could be anything, to business. $1 million is not going to get me the
Yeah.
same thing's not going to get me to 3 million or to 10 million. So you have to change, a lot of things about yourself. And I look at that a lot. And then it may be, I've witnessed that car accident. And then a couple years ago, I developed like 6 blood clots in my left leg and almost died. So I've had, a few near-death experiences that have
Yes.
forced me to like reevaluate my life, especially like the blood clots. I couldn't run, I couldn't exercise, I couldn't do anything but just sit around and, mope and be depressed and think my life is over as I know it. And that really forced me to analyze a lot of things, including my relationships, and not just relationships with other people, but my relationship with myself as well. I think that's important as well.
Isn't it though, right? Like, if not, that might be the most important thing you learned through your journey in life, is to have a positive relationship with yourself. I've had to learn how to have a positive relationship with my own mirror, because I haven't always liked what I've seen in my own mirror. So I've had to learn how to do that.
Yeah. That's I still struggle with that. I'm much better at appreciating what I've done
Yeah.
than I used to be. I used to be, it's not enough. And I just beat myself up constantly.
Oh man.
And, I wrote about that in my first book, Acknowledgement, because I realized I never acknowledged myself. And I thought, as a leader, if I can't acknowledge myself, how am I going to be able to acknowledge my staff? I mean, I went to the
Yes.
Ironman in
Yeah.
2005 as a spectator. My first time to Hawaii, first time to watch the race. I stood on the finish line, and I have a picture of myself under the finish line in 2005.
Yeah.
And I told myself, one day I'm going to do this race. In 2015, I raced the World Championship and crossed that same finish line. And I never once thought, man, I accomplished something cool. It took me 10 years, right? I was
Mhm.
just thinking, what's the next thing I want to accomplish? And that was at that moment, I thought, I've got a problem here. I should stop beating myself up and always like, what's the next biggest thing? And take a moment to appreciate what just happened. And then also appreciate the people in my team, my company, and people in my relationships and, everything.
Isn't there that book where the guy, wasn't it the guy chases a Ferrari or something? He's always chasing the next thing. The book has escaped my mind right now, but it's a metaphor for kind of life.
The monk in the Ferrari or something? Is that what?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Christian, I can again relate to your statement on wondering what to do next. When I've started this, like the Business Athlete Performance Lab, after I sold my last company and gone through my journey here, I joke that I don't want to be Corey Feldman or or Joey Fatone. Like, I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. I don't want to be, Rick Astley. Like and that's, humorously or not, it's been part of my drive, frankly, where it's okay. I got to do more than just what I've accomplished. Yet, to many people would see what I've accomplished or you've accomplished. And again, I want to keep this relatable to the audience. They're thinking, yeah, but you guys have done more than most people have already done. So what are you belly aching about? But those that don't know what goes on in my mind or your mind can't kind of wrap their head around that thought process.
Well, I think it's not doing more than what most people have done. I think it's only comparing to what you're capable of. Because a lot of people say with me, like, why, I'm working my third book now. And a lot of people are like, well, how come you just didn't stop after your first book? I'm like, I'm not just trying to like check the box and say I'm a published author. I feel like I have things I want to leave behind and hopefully help other people. That's my motivator. And I'm not just trying to check a box to say I'm achieving something. I compare only to myself. I used to be very competitive with other people, but to me, it's like, what's the point? I'm just going to be competitive with myself and say, what do I have the potential to accomplish? It doesn't matter what other people have accomplished. I'm not here to judge what somebody else.
Agreed. So here's the fun question. I can't believe we're already 50 minutes into our chat, and I want to be respectful of your time. So, I had a fellow named John Anderson in the lab here on Monday. The guy been one of the world's strongest people, a world famous wrestler, bodybuilder, and we talked for an hour. And I'm like, John, he's like, yeah, I'm coming back. I'm like, all right, okay, good. So we're gonna do part 2, part 3. I feel like I might have to have Christian Espinosa back for part 2. Like, I just feel like I'm scratching the surface with you, man. Like, veteran, you've spent time in the military. Like, your story is, you've done a lot. And I'm setting that up because like, what are you doing for the next 7 years? Like, let's just talk about 53 to 60. I know you're all about Blue Goat security and building the, Blue Goat cyber. But like, what's the goals for the next 7 years, Christian?
3 primary goals. Number 1 is to build my business to be the market leader in medical device cybersecurity. That's our niche.
Yes.
That's the goal. I don't know if I'll sell the business or if I'll stay in it. I'm not sure. I made some mistakes selling the first one, but that's the goal, to become the market leader in that space, and to 10x my revenue this year, and then hopefully be able to 10x it every year. That's the plan. The second goal is to finish my next book, which I'm working on now, and then I have ideas for a couple more. So it'll probably be 3 to 4 books in 7 years. And then the next goal after that is to get into more keynote speaking. I've done quite a bit of that, but I've had to put it on hold. I've gotten better at saying no to things, which is why I'm not running an Ironman right now, why I'm not doing ultra marathons, why not climbing mountains, because when I spread myself too thin, I don't make as much progress. So I'm trying to be hyper focused on my business right now. And then when I'm able to step away and become more the owner, less operator, focus on those other things. And of course, I want to have a successful relationship with my girlfriend as well, and maintain my health. I mean, those are the main areas.
Yeah. Christian, you said that you made mistakes with selling your first business. What kind of mistakes did you make? I sold my business too, so I'm curious. When my ears perked up when you said I made some mistakes, and I wonder whether I made some as well. I'm sure I did. I know I did, right? I would be naive to say I didn't make mistakes. What mistakes did you make selling your business?
So I was getting a lot of offers on on my business. And this was during COVID. So part of what we did was training, in-person training. That was like 40% of my business. And that went away. So I think I was coming from a fear perspective when I made some decisions to sell. And the company that approached me, they're a publicly traded company. At the time, their name was Cerberus,
Mhm.
the three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. I have a patent on a device for a cyber attack simulation called Cerberus. And the squadron I was in at the Air Force Academy was called Cerberus. So I thought, oh, this synchronicity means it must be meant to be. And I felt like, at the time it was the right decision. But I sold for stock primarily. And I spent a lot of time with a parent company, a little over a year, trying to build them up and get the stock up. But I could never sell the stock when I was part of the company because there's always a freaking blackout. So when I left, when I exited, I started selling the stock. And then the stock was when I left around $5. So I was able to sell quite a bit, but I had restrictions on how much I could sell. And it slowly went down to like 10 cents. So all this money I had, I was able to capitalize on some of it, but the rest of it was just a ride down to 10 cents,
Dude.
So
Dude.
it's painful.
Yes. Well, you're watching it go down too, and you're like, I can't do nothing about it.
Yes. I'm like, do I hold on to it and hope it goes back up, or what I do? And then I also bought ISOs. I bought a bunch of incentivized stock options as an employee at a certain strike price. And when I bought it, the price is higher. I think the strike price is $2. The price of the fair market value is like $5. And then of course the stock went to 10 cents. So I still had to pay taxes on that delta. Which when I lost all the money, is like I put myself in kind of a precarious scenario. But I mean, I was able to capitalize quite a bit of it before it went down, but my net worth went down. So now if I sell again, I'm not going to do it for stock as much, despite how lucrative the opportunity may look, because the company's going to go public and blah, 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 blah. That's money in the bank is much better than hypothetical money on the stock market.
There's a great learning, right? And a great way to probably wrap up the show, which is money in the bank. Money in the bank is better than money in the stock market, eh, Christian?
Yes.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm regretful that I didn't book more than an hour with you. I'm going to be really frank with you. I've had, like I said, I've had hundreds of guests through the lab here. And I knew coming in that I figured we were going to have a great conversation. But as we're talking, this is getting into somewhat like Joe Rogan zone, where I'm like, I could sit with Christian for probably 2, 3, 4 hours and, talk about medical device cybersecurity, talk about Blue Goat, talk about being a veteran and your military experience, talk about writing books, keynote speaker, blood clot survivor, the accident. I want to apologize to you that I don't believe I did a good enough job drawing some of this out. And I hope that you'll come back again and have a second chat with me here in the lab, Christian.
Yeah, definitely. For sure, Keith. I enjoy our conversation. We have a lot in common, and I think we're struggling with a lot of the same things.
Yes. And you know what? I'm happy to do it. And I'm in the process of building a business based on trust. And I think trust is built on being me in front of the camera and in front of the audience. And the more that I can be real in front of the audience, the more people can trust in me. So I'm trying to build the show and build content that's entertaining and informative, but it's real. And when I sit down with guys like yourself, I'm like, I don't want to let this guy go. I want to sit and chat because I'm getting a lot. I'm learning. I'm getting a lot from this. This is like therapy for me. So when I leave this, no, I'm serious because I've done
a lot of therapy myself, so I understand.
Right, exactly, right. And just by I'm feeling like there's this permission. I'm gonna feel good when we wrap up to go up for an hour with my son, and I'm gonna go, okay. I'm gonna be in the micro moment. I had a good chat with Christian. My afternoon now is gonna be much more positive because of how we've exchanged words, how you've created some awareness and reminders for me that I'm doing the right thing coming up. And I know that I am doing the right thing, Christian, but sometimes how you need to kind of talk it out with somebody and talk things through where your emotion changes about a moment. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of my son. Like, Keith, why would you want to go hang out with a kid? Nothing to do with that at all. No, nothing to do with that at all, frankly. It's just this awareness that we sometimes lose perspective of when we're so focused on a macro goal. And I'm trying to build a business helping people achieve their big macro goals. You reminded me today to not forget about the micro moments on the way to the macro goal. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
Thanks for providing an opportunity.
Yeah, this was great. So listen, let's wrap her up. Nation, you got to get Christian's book. And I hope you'll come back for a second chat with Christian. He's agreed to come back and join me again. Life in the Micros available. In between Life in the Micros available on Amazon. You can find Christian on LinkedIn. Christian, you can where else can they find you? Blue Goat Cyber. Take a moment to make sure the audience can find you and get to know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, christianespinosa.com is my personal brand website.
Yeah.
bluegoatcyber.com is for my company. I'm on LinkedIn. My books are on Amazon. The Audible version, which I had Kaleo Griffith narrate, he did like Trump's The Art of the Deal and one of Tim Ferriss's book. That just came out not too long ago for the In-Between Life and the Micro as well. So that's on audible.com.
Good for you. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for joining me once again. I'm going to have, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a week of second guest returns. John Anderson, Christian Espinosa, and we're going to make long bookings and have good chats and create good content for the audience. I know we are. So if you wouldn't mind just hanging tight in the green room for a quick second, I'll go say goodbye to the audience and I'll come walk you out. Okay.
Yeah. Rock and roll.
Awesome. Hang tight here. All right. Christian Espinosa joining me here today in the lab. I hope you guys were inspired by that as much as I was. I'm not going to be here long because I want us to hang on these particular words. If you're achieving a macro goal or on your way to a macro goal, like I know I am, I'm trying to become the biggest talk show host on LinkedIn and YouTube, trying to create what means trying. I'm on my way to becoming the biggest talk show host on LinkedIn and YouTube. And I'm on my way to creating the biggest talk show on LinkedIn and YouTube. But I am not going to forget the micro moments on the way. Because you know what? There's been some times in the last few months I might have been. So I'm going to thank Christian for reminding me not to forget the micro moments on the way to the macro goal. So I'll leave that for you guys, nation. Put that in your bonnet. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Mornings in the lab, Keith and Nicole. We got a big one. We got somebody who's going to reveal his big audacious goal tomorrow. Mornings in the lab. I'm going to go walk Christian up. See you guys tomorrow.